So first, please subscribe our channel and like this video, press the bell icon, and make sure to join our WhatsApp and Telegram. Hello friends, welcome to the channel Bang on Theory. So friends, in today's video we are going to discuss very important questions, top 100 Java questions which are mostly asked in almost all companies and MNC technical interview round. So please don't skip this video, because if you are planning and if you are preparing for your upcoming placement and off-campus drive, so this video is very important for you. So please don't skip this video, and please support our channel, subscribe our channel, like this video, and you can also join our WhatsApp and Telegram group. So let's start. So first question is, explain JDK, JRE and JVM. So you already know about what is the JDK, what is JRE and what is JVM, but interviewer expect from you you should know about the difference between JDK, JRE and JVM. So okay, so JDK stands for Java Development Kit, and JRE stands for Java Runtime Environment, and JVM stands for Java Virtual Machine. You already know about that, but what is the actual difference? So whenever we try to and whenever we want to compile and execute Java code in our system, so we need to install JDK in our system. Okay, so first we install Java Development Kit and download this Java Development Kit from the official website of Java. Okay, and we install this Java Development Kit. So it is the tool necessary to compile the Java code and to document the Java code and package Java programs. Okay, so in JDK it contains JRE plus development tools. So first we install JDK in our system, this development kit in our system. This kit and this tool contains JRE plus some development tools. Okay, so first part is JDK. I hope you understood. Okay, next is, inside this JDK kit there is a runtime environment which refers to by which our Java bytecode can be executed. Okay, so to execute Java bytecode we need this runtime environment. First we install Java Development Kit, set up the runtime path in our system. Okay, Java path in our system. So this runtime environment helps us to execute our Java bytecode, and we can say it's an implementation of a JVM which physically exists. So first is JDK, next is JRE, and after this is JVM, Java Virtual Machine. So it is an abstract machine, and we can say hidden implementation machine. So it is a specification that provides a runtime environment. Okay, and in which Java bytecode can be executed. So don't confuse between JRE and JVM. First is JRE, which contains JVM. So we can say JRE is an implementation of the JVM. To implement JVM and to if we want to use JVM, we need JRE. Okay, so to help the implementation of JVM we need JRE. Okay, so JRE is an implementation of JVM which physically exists, and JVM does not physically exist. It is virtual and abstract machine. So first difference is JRE is physical exist and JVM does not physically exist because it is an abstract and virtual machine. Okay, and it is a specification that provides a runtime environment in which Java bytecode can be executed. Okay, so JRE is also responsible for execution of Java bytecode, but to perform this action we need JVM. So JRE implements the JVM, and JVM follows three notations. First is specification, implementation, and runtime instance. So we will discuss about this later. Okay, so I hope you understood about this. First is JDK. We need to install JDK kit in our system and set up runtime path in our system, and after this there is JVM, which is responsible for the execution of and responsible for providing runtime environment and for execution of Java bytecode. Okay, so I hope you understood. So next is, explain public static void main. Okay, in every program we need to write this main, public static void main, in our starting, and inside this we perform all our execution and all our operations. So but what is the actual meaning of this public static void main and this string argument in Java? So we should know about this. Okay, so first is main method. Main method in Java is the entry point for any Java program. Okay, so it is always written as public. Okay, public access modifier, public static void main string argument. Okay, and public is public access modifier, which is used to specify who can access this method. So we use public because it will be accessible by any class. Okay, any number of class which we want to use in our program. So this main method can be used by any class. Okay, so what is static? What is the purpose of static in this main method? So it is a keyword in Java which identifies it is a class based. Okay, but why we use static? So purpose of static in our main method is main is not made static. Okay, so then the compiler will throw an error because main is called by the JVM before any objects are made. So if we don't use static in our main method, so compiler will throw an error, as main is called by the JVM before any objects are made, and only static methods can be directly invoked via the class. So we actually don't need any object to for this method if we use static. Okay, if we use static method, so we don't need any object to initialize and to call this method. Okay, so we basically use this static method. By this we can directly invoke via the class. So what is the purpose of this void? You already know about the void in C and C++. So it is the return type of the method, and void defines the method which will not return any value. Okay, and main is the basically name of method which is searched by the JVM, and we can say is a starting point for an application with a particular signature only, and it is a method where the main execution occurs. So main is the starting point of any Java program, and string argument, it is the parameter passed to the main method. So we will discuss about the string argument in later. Okay, so I hope you understood what is the main and public, static, void, main. Okay, so next question is why Java is platform independent. This question is very important. Okay, so why Java is platform independent? So Java is called platform independent because of its bytecode, because Java bytecodes which can run on any system irrespective of its underlying operating system. We need to write once and read anywhere. So it follows the write once and read anywhere principle. So we need to write first Java code and need to execute. So by this, the bytecode of the that particular Java program which can run on any system irrespective of its underlying operating system by using JVM. Okay, so JVM helps us to run our Java program anywhere. Okay, and any system irrespective of its underlying operating system. Okay, so I hope you understood. Okay, so this question is also very important. Why Java is not 100% object oriented? Okay, most of you don't know about this because this question can be we can say why Java is not purely object oriented. Java is object oriented language, but Java is not purely object oriented language, and we can say Java is not 100% object oriented language. There is a reason, because according to object oriented principle, Java does not follows one principle which says if any language, and we can say any language which have a particular primitive data types, so that primitive data types should be objects. But in Java, because it makes use of Java have 8 primitive data types such as boolean, byte, character, int, float, double, long, short, which are not objects. So it violates the principle of 100% object oriented language. That's why Java is not called purely object oriented language. Okay, I hope you understood, because the primitive data types which we have in Java which are not objects. Okay, so to follow the principle of, and we can say to 100% object oriented language. Okay, so Java primitive data types should be and must be objects. So okay, I hope you understood. That's why Java is not 100% purely object oriented language. Okay, so what are wrapper classes in Java? Okay, so wrapper classes converts the primitive data types. We have primitive data types in Java: character, byte, short, long, float, double, boolean. So wrapper class is responsible to convert the Java primitives into the reference type. Okay, and we can say objects. So what is the actual purpose of wrapper class? So we have primitive data type which have a class dedicated to it. Okay, these are known as wrapper class. we have different data types, character, byte, short. So we also have dedicated class to it, okay, and these classes are known as wrapper class because they wrap the primitive data type into an object of that class. And refer to below image, which we can see these are different primitive data types and these are different wrapper class corresponding to this primitive data types. So we will discuss about this later, what is the actual use of this wrapper class, but you should know about what is wrapper class. So wrapper class, we have different data types in our Java, and that primitive data types has a class dedicated to it, and that particular classes are called wrapper classes. Okay, so I hope you understood. So next is, what are constructor in Java? I know most of you already know about constructor in Java. So in Java, constructor refers to the block of code, and we can say which is used to initialize an object, and it must have the same name as that of a class. Okay, so constructor is simply a block of code which is responsible to initialize an object, and rule is it must have the same name as that of the class. Okay, and also it has no return type. Okay, constructor has no return type, and it is also automatically called when an object is created. Okay, so there are basically two types of constructors. First is default constructor and second is parameterized constructor. So default constructor is simple constructor which does not take any inputs. In other words, default constructor are those constructors which have not any arguments, and we can say which have not any parameters, which will be created by default in case no other constructor is defined by the user. So its main purpose is simply to initialize the instance variable with the default values. Okay, also it is majorly responsible for object creation, as simple. Okay, and next is parameterized constructor. So as the name says, the parameterized, so is the constructor which is capable of initializing the instance variable with the provided values. So we can pass the values to this parameterized constructor. In other words, we can see the constructor which take the arguments are called parameterized constructor. I hope you understood what is the difference between default constructor and parameterized constructor and what is constructor in Java. Okay, so next is, what is singleton class in Java and how can we make a class singleton? So singleton is simple, a class whose only one instance can be created at any given time. So we can only create one instance variable at any given time in one JVM. Okay, a class can be made singleton by making its constructor private. So we will discuss about this later, but you should know about what is singleton class. So you can simply define a singleton class is a class whose only one instance can be created at any given time in one JVM, and a class can be made singleton class by making its constructor private. Okay, I hope you understood. So next is, what is the difference between ArrayList and vector? Okay, so ArrayList, first difference is ArrayList is not synchronized. Okay, so ArrayList is not synchronized, whereas vector is synchronized. Don't worry about this, we will discuss about ArrayList and vector in our next video, but you should know about for your interview what is the difference between ArrayList and vector. And if you already know about what is ArrayList and if you already know about what is vector, so you should also know about what is the difference between ArrayList and vector. So if you have any problem, if you want any separate and individual video for ArrayList and vector with their program and explanation, so you can comment. Okay, so ArrayList is not synchronized, first difference is, whereas vector is synchronized. Okay, and if we talk about ArrayList, so ArrayList is fast as compared to vector as it's non-synchronized. Okay, because synchronization is not possible in ArrayList, and because of synchronization vector is slow, and as it is thread safe, safety is applicable in vector, and because of this synchronization safety is there, but vector is slow. Okay, and in ArrayList is fast because as there is non-synchronization. Okay, and next is, if an element is inserted into the ArrayList, it increases its array size by 50%. Okay, and in vector defaults to doubling size of its array. Okay, next, ArrayList does not define the increment size. We don't need to define any increment size in ArrayList. It automatically increase the increment size. Okay, in vector we need to define the increment size. Okay, in ArrayList we can only use iterator for traversing an array list. Okay, if we want to traverse our array list, so we can only use iterator for traversing our array list. In vector we can use both enumeration and iterator for traversing. We can also use enumeration, okay, and iterator for traversing. So we will discuss about this later in our next video, what is array list and vector, but you should know about the difference between array list and vector. Okay, so I hope you understood. So what is the difference between equals method and equals in Java? Okay, so equals is basically a method, is defined in object class in Java and used for checking equality of two objects, okay, defined by business logic. Whereas equals or equality operator in Java is a binary operator provided by Java programming language and used to compare primitives and objects. Okay, so we can simply say equals is a method, okay, is then defined in object class in Java, okay, and used for checking equality, and equals is an equality operator, not a method, okay, in Java is a binary operator, okay, and used to compare primitives and objects, okay, and public boolean equals is the method provided by object class. So default implementation uses equals to operator to compare two objects, okay. So method can be overridden like string class. Equals method is used to compare the value of two objects, okay. So I hope you understood what is the difference between equals is method, is defined in object class, and equals is an equality operator in Java, is and it's a binary operator provided by Java, which is used to compare primitives and objects. So next is, what are the difference between heap and stack memory in Java? So there are different memory portions in Java: heap, stack. So what is the difference between stack and heap portion? So with respect to different features, so first if we talk about stack with respect to memory, so stack memory is used only by one thread of execution, okay. So stack memory is used only by one thread of execution at a time, and heap memory is dynamic, so it is used by all the parts of the application, okay. And if we talk about access feature, the stack memory can't be accessed by other thread, okay, because stack memory is used only by one thread of execution at a time, okay. If we talk about heap, so objects created in the heaps are globally accessible, okay. If we talk about memory management features, so stack follows last in first out manner to free memory, you already know about that. And if we talk about heap, memory management is based on the generation associated with each object, okay. So it is dynamic, it is based on the generation associated with each object. If we talk about lifetime, so exist until the end of execution of the thread, okay. So if we talk about heap memory lives from the start till the end of application execution, and stack exists until the end of execution of the thread, and it will exist until the till the end of application execution, okay. If we talk about usage, so stack memory only contains local primitives and reference variable to object in heap space, okay. And whereas heap, whenever an object is created, it's always stored in the heap space, okay. Stack memory only contains local primitives and reference variable, and whereas object is created, it's always stored in the heap space. I hope you understood the difference between stack and heap. So next is what is a package in Java? You already know about what is a package in Java, so list out various advantages of package. So packages in Java are the collection of related classes and interfaces which are bundled together, okay. You already know about what is package, okay. So we import different packages in our program. By using package, developer can easily modularize the code and optimize its reuse, okay. So what is the actual and various advantages of package? So also the code within the package can be imported by other classes and reused. So list out different advantages. So first advantage, packages help in avoiding name clashes, okay. So it helps us to avoid different name clashes and also provide easier access control on the code, okay. And it can also contain hidden classes which are not visible to outer classes, so we just need to simply import that particular class and particular package, okay, by which we can use the feature of that particular program, okay, and only used within the package, and also creates a proper hierarchical structure which makes it easier to locate the related class, okay. So I hope you understood. Next is why pointer are not used in Java. We can use pointer in C and C++, but why we can't use pointer in Java? So there is a specific reason related to safety. So Java does not use pointer because they are unsafe and increases the complexity of the program. So Java is also always known for its simplicity of a code. So if we use pointer in Java and adding the concept of pointer, it will be contradict. Okay, so moreover, since JVM is responsible for implicit memory allocation in Java, so in order to avoid direct access to memory by the user, pointer are discouraged in Java, and for the safety purpose we can't use pointer in Java. So okay, so I hope you understood. So next is, what is JIT compiler in Java? Okay, so there is a compiler in Java, JIT compiler, which stands for just in time compiler. Okay, so it is also very important question. So it is a program that helps in converting the Java bytecode into instruction. Okay, and there is a specific purpose for which we need to convert Java bytecode into instruction that are sent directly to the processor. So by default, the JIT compiler is enabled in Java and is activated whenever Java method is invoked. So JIT compiler then compiles the Java code of the invoked method and called method into native machine code and compile it just in time to execute. Once the method has been compiled, then JVM summons the compiled code of the method directly rather than interpreting it. This is why it is often responsible for the performance of optimization of Java application and return time. So whenever we write any method in our Java program, so that particular method first is invoked. Okay, and JIT is responsible to convert that particular Java bytecode into instruction, which is basically helpful for and responsible for the performance optimization of Java applications at the runtime. So it directly invoked method is converted into native machine codes. Okay, and then compile it just in time to execute. Okay, so just in time compiler, I hope you understood. So next is, what are the different access modifier in Java and what is the difference between all access modifiers in Java. So you already know what is access modifier. Access modifier are special keywords which are used to restrict the access of a class, constructor, data member and method in another class. Okay, so if you want any restriction, if you want to provide any restriction to the access of a class, particular constructor, data member and method, so we can use different access modifier. So there are basically 4 types of access modifier: default, private, protected and public. So with respect to different accessibility, same class, same package subclass. So if we talk about default access modifier, so within same class it can be accessible, and if we talk about same package subclass, it is also accessible. Okay, if we talk about same package non subclass, so it can be accessible. Okay, and if we talk about different package subclass, okay, so it can't be accessible. Okay, and if we talk about different package non subclass, so it also can't be accessible. If we talk about public access modifier, so it can be accessible for all classes and all same class, same package subclass and same package non subclass, different package subclass. If we talk about private access modifier, so it can be only accessible same class, within same class. Okay, and if we talk about protected access modifier, so it can be accessible by all classes except different package non subclass. So there is a restriction for different package non subclass. Public is accessible for all classes, private is only accessible within class, and protected is accessible by all classes except different package non subclass, and default is accessible for same class, for same package subclass and for same package non subclass, but for different package and for different package non subclass it can't be accessible. So I hope you understood what are different access modifier and what is the actual restriction between different classes and subclasses for different access modifier. So if we talk about I know it's very simple question, what is a class in Java, but most of the question can't give the proper definition of the class and object in Java. That's why I took this question in this video. Okay, so what is a class in Java? So class is simply and we can say it is a blueprint which includes all your data. Okay, so class contain fields, variables and method to describe the behavior of object. If we talk about the basic syntax, so we only need to use this class keyword and user defined class name, and whatever member, variable and method you want, you can include in this class. Okay, so class is simply a blueprint which can includes all your data. Okay, so if we talk about object in Java and how it is created, so object is a real world entity which includes state and behavior. Okay, so object has basically 3 characteristics. First is state, then is behavior, then its identity. Okay, so if we want to create an object, so we can use new keyword. For example, this particular class name and particular object variable, and this new keyword to object initialization and to creation of object, and this constructor, this class constructor. Okay, so we'll discuss about this later, and we already made video for Java part 1, so you can watch this particular video. We already discussed about what is class and what is Java in detail in our that particular video, so you can watch this video. You can click on I button and watch that video. Okay, so next is what is object oriented programming. You already know about object oriented programming. Okay, so object oriented programming, also known as OOPS, is a programming model or approach where the programs are organized around object rather than logic and function. Okay, so there are different object oriented principle which is mainly responsible for this object oriented language, and which helps to implement the all features of object oriented programming language like inheritance, encapsulation, and abstraction. So we'll discuss about this later. So simply, if you want to define what is OOPS, so OOPS is a programming model or approach where the programs are organized around objects rather than logic. Okay, organized around the object rather than logics and function. So in other words, OOPS mainly focus on the objects that are required to manipulate instead of logic. So this approach is ideal for the program large and complex code and need to actively update it or maintain. Okay, so what are the main concepts of OOPS? So first is inheritance. We will discuss about all this later, but we should know about the particular definition and basic definition of all these OOPS concept. So if we talk about inheritance, so inheritance is the process where one class acquires the property of another. I mean, you can say there is a child parent relationship between different classes. So if we talk about encapsulation in Java, is a mechanism of wrapping up the data and code together in as a single unit in a capsule form, we can say. That's why its name is encapsulation. So it basically wrap the data and code together in a single unit. So if we talk about abstraction, so abstraction is a methodology of hiding the implementation detail and from the user and only providing the functionality to this. And we can say what and it provides us functionality to whatever data we want to expose and whatever we don't want to expose. So we can use this functionality of abstraction and use this methodology to hide our implementation details from the user. And if we talk about polymorphism, it is the ability of variable, functions, or object to take multiple forms. Okay, and it is the ability of variable, functions, or object to take multiple forms. Don't worry, we will discuss about this later. So you should know the basic definition of all OOPS concept. Okay, so next is what is the difference between a local variable and an instance variable. So local variable is simply typically used inside a method. That particular variable which is basically declared and used inside the method, that particular variable is called local variable, as simple. And in method, constructor, or block, and as only local scope. Okay, so this variable can be used only within the scope of a block. That particular variable is called local variable. As you can see in this example, the test variable, test string, is a local variable, is inside within the scope and within the block. And where the instance variable is a Java is a variable which is bounded to its object itself. Okay, and we can say that particular variable which is outside the method and inside the class. So as we can see, these two variables is inside the class but outside the method. So these variables are declared within a class but outside the method. So every object of that particular class will create its own copy of the variable while using it. So any changes made to the variable would not reflect in any other instances of that class and will bound to that particular instance only. Okay, so I hope you understood the difference between. So now the difference between the constructor and method. This question is also very important. So method is simple, as we can say the function which we use in C and C++. So in Java we can say method, and we basically call function as a method. Okay, so method is used to represent the behavior of an object. Okay, and it also have a return type, and it's need to be called explicitly and invoked explicitly, and no default method is provided by the compiler, and method name may or may not be same as a class name. But if we talk about constructor, it is basically simply used to initialize the state of an object. It does not have any return type, and it is invoked implicitly, and method is invoked explicitly. We basically need to call the method and invoke the method, but constructor is automatically implicitly invoked, and our default constructor is provided by the compiler. But if we talk about method, so no default method is provided by the compiler, and if the class has none. And if we talk about constructor, name must always be the same as the class name. Okay, so I hope you understood the difference between the constructor and method. So what is the final keyword in Java? So final is a special keyword in Java that is used as a non-access modifier. So final is not an access modifier. Okay, so don't confuse about this. Final is the access modifier. It basically provides a restriction for a particular class and method. The final is a non-access modifier, but is a special keyword and it is used for different contexts, such as first, when the final keyword is used with a variable, then its value can't be changed once assigned. Okay, so its value will be fixed if you use final keyword with that particular variable. So in case there no value had been assigned to the final variable, then using only the class constructor to a value can be assigned to it. So if no value has been assigned to that particular final variable, then using only the class constructor, so we need to use only class constructor, a value can be assigned to it. Okay, otherwise we can't change the and we can't assign the value to that particular final variable. Okay, and if we talk about final method, so when a method is declared final, then it can't be overridden by the inheriting class. So if we declare that particular method is final, then it can't be overridden by the inheriting class, and we can't manipulate and modify the variable of that particular method. Okay, and if we talk about final class, and if class is declared as final Java, it can't be extended. We can't extend and we can't use inheritance functionality on that particular class by any subclass, but it can extend another class. Okay, we can extend that particular class, but we can't use and we can say it can't be extended by any subclass. Okay, so I hope you understood. So what is the difference between break and continue statement? You already know about this. You already use the break statement and continue statement in C and C++. In Java it's also same. Okay, so break statement can be used in switch and loop, whereas continue can be only used in within loop statement, and it causes the switch or loop statement to terminate the movement if it's executed, and it does not terminate the loop but causes the loop to jump to the next iteration. It basically helps us to skip that particular iteration. Okay, and it terminates the innermost enclosing loop or switch immediately. And if we talk about continue within a loop nested with a switch will cause the next loop iteration to execute. So this is basically example of break and continue. You already know about that, and you already used break and continue statement in our program. Okay, so next is, what is an infinite loop in Java? This question is also very important, and so we will discuss this infinite loop with the example. So infinite loop is simply an instruction sequence in Java that loops endlessly. Okay, and we can say that particular loop goes to infinite execution and goes to infinite endless execution when a functional exist is not met. Okay, and that particular condition not met, so that particular loop goes to endless iteration and endless execution. Okay, so this type of loop can be the result of programming error or may also be a deliberate action based on the application behavior. So there is a basic simple example of infinite loop, and we can say there is a particular class name infinite for loop demo. Inside there is a main method, and this is infinite for loop which does not hold any conditions, and we can say there is a programmatically error in this for loop. By this to terminate this program, we can use press Ctrl C in the console to terminate this program. So this is the basic example of infinite loop in Java. Okay, I hope you understood. So next is the difference between this and super keyword. Okay, these keywords are very important. Okay, we will discuss about this later, and we will execute different programs using this and super keyword. So this represent the current instance of a class. We can say this keyword represent the current instance of a class, and super represent the current instance of the parent or base class. This also always represent the current instance, but super represent the current instance of a parent or base class. Okay, and this is used to call the default constructor of the same class, and whereas super is used to call the default constructor of parent base class. We can say this is we use this when there is no need, and when we basically don't want to use inheritance and don't want to use any child and parent relationship between different classes. But if we are using child and parent concepts in our classes, and there is a parent class and base class, and if we want to call the default constructor, and if we want to represent the current instance, and we want to use access methods of the base class, so we need to use this super class. Okay, to refer the particular parent class and to refer the particular default constructor. Okay, and if we want to use access method of the current class, so we can use this at this method, but if we want to use the access method of base class, so we need to use super. And if we want to use for printing the current, so this always talk about the current class, current instance, current constructor, default constructor. And super always talk about the base and parent class. Okay, always talk about parent class, so used for pointing the super class instance. If we talk about this, so must be the first line of a block. This always must be the first line of a block if we want to use this keyword, this method and this keyword. So this method, so you need to use and you must be write this this method to the first line of a block. And super must be the first line of a block. Super always be the must be the first line of a block. Okay, so I hope you understood. So next is, what is a Java string pool? Okay, this question is also very important. And so Java string pool is simply a collections of different string which we want to use in our system, which we want to write in our system, which are stored in a heap memory. So string pool is always stored in a heap memory. So whenever a new object is created, just like S1, S2, S3, string pool first check whether the object is already present in the pool or not. Okay, so if it is present, then the same reference is written. As you can see in this example, string S1 equals to apple and string S3 equals to apple also. So the same reference is returned to the variable. Okay, same reference return, else new object will be created in the string pool and the respective reference will be written. So I hope you understood about Java string pool. If there is same reference for different objects, so it basically use simply that particular same reference. Instead of this creating a new reference for new object, they basically use that same reference for that particular object. Okay, if they have particular same value, and we can say same reference. Okay, so I hope you understood. So what is the difference between static method and non-static method? We already discussed about static method, but what is the difference between static method and non-static method? So static keyword must be used before the method name. Okay, static keyword all must be used before the method name. If you want to use static method, if we want to declare particular method as a static method, so we need to use static keyword before the method name. But for static method, there is no need to declare and no need to use the static keyword before the method name. Simply method. And non-static method, there is a not any particular keyword before that particular method. So it is called using the class. If we want to call particular static method, so we need to call using the class. Okay, and it is can be called by any general method. Okay, they can't access any non-static instance variable. Inside this static method, we can't access any non-static instance variable or method. But in non-static method, we can access any static method and any static variable without creating an instance of a class. Okay, so I hope you understood. So next is, what is the constructor chaining in Java? We already discussed about constructor, but what is the constructor chaining in Java? So in Java, constructor chaining is basically a simple process of calling one's constructor from another with respect to the current object. Okay, so constructor chaining is possible only through legacy. If we have a particular constructor legacy, constructor by constructor, constructor by constructor, so that process of calling of one constructor from another with respect to the current object, and that particular legacy where a subclass constructor is responsible for calling and invoking the superclass constructor first. So there could be any number of classes in the constructor chain. Okay, and constructor chain can be achieved in two ways: within the same class using this keyword and this method, and from base class using super. Okay, so I hope you understood about. We will discuss about this later, and what is constructor chaining by using different example and by using execution. Okay, so next is difference between StringBuilder and StringBuffer. This question is also very important. Okay, so with respect to different factors, if we talk about string, so string storage area we already discussed is a constant string pool. But if we talk about StringBuilder, okay, so we will talk about this StringBuilder and StringBuffer in our next video. Okay, so don't worry about what is StringBuilder and StringBuffer. So in this question, our only aim is to differentiate this StringBuilder and StringBuffer. Okay, so if we talk about storage, so in StringBuilder, storage area is heap area, and StringBuffer also heap area. If we talk about mutability, and we can say modification in changes, string is also immutable. We can't change and we can't modify string, and StringBuilder is mutable and modifiable, and StringBuffer is also mutable. And if we talk about thread safety, the string is follows thread safety feature, but in StringBuilder and StringBuffer there is not any thread safety feature. If we talk about performance, string is fast, and StringBuilder is and StringBuffer are not fast, but string builder are more efficient, and string builder is less efficient compared to string builder. Okay, so I hope you understood about this. Okay, so next is what is a class loader in Java. Okay, we have a class, but what is the class loader in Java? So Java class loader is a subset of JVM. Okay, and it is responsible for loading our class. Okay, we basically create a class, but to load our class we need class loader. Okay, and class loader is basically a subset of our JVM machine. Okay, so it is basically responsible for loading our class file. So whenever Java program is executed, it is first loaded by the class loader. So Java provided 3 built-in class loader. So we have bootstrap class loader, extension class loader, and system application class loader. All have different purpose and different execution responsibility. Okay, so I hope you understood what is a class loader in Java. So next is why Java strings are immutable in nature. We already discussed about and differentiate Java strings, StringBuffer and StringBuilder, and we already seen that Java strings are immutable. But why Java strings are immutable in nature? So there is a particular reason. In Java, string objects are immutable in nature, which simply means when the string object is created, its states cannot be modified. We can't modify that particular string. Okay, but whenever you try to update the value of that object, instead of updating the value of that particular object, Java creates a new string object. Okay, so whenever you want to update the value of that particular object, Java always create a new string object instead of updating the value of that particular object. Okay, so Java string objects are immutable, as string objects are generally cached in the string pool. Okay, so since string literals are usually shared between multiple clients, action from one client might affect the rest. So there is a safety purpose, and we can say the client and developer, and we can say client and database interaction, and modifiable and security purpose. So we can say string literal are usually shared between multiple clients. That's why it is immutable, and its action from one client might affect the rest client. Okay, so if multiple client interact with particular application and with particular port, and so we can say, so to protect the changes between different databases for same reference, so we need to use string literals as a immutable, because multiple clients if interact with particular applications, so action from one client might affect the rest. Okay, so it enhances security, caching, synchronization, and performance of the application. Okay, next is what is the difference between an array and array list. So we already talk about array and array list. So but what is the difference between array and array list? So array cannot contain value of different data types. Array always contain value of same data type. If you want to use a string, so you can if you want to use character, so you can use character. If you want to use numeric value, so you can use numeric value. So you need to use same data type values. But in array list, we can contain value of different data types, character, numeric value, boolean value, whatever you want. Okay, if we talk about array, size must be defined at the time of declaration. We need to give the size of that particular array at the time of declaration, and this is dynamic, so size can be dynamically changed. Okay, so need to specify the index in order to add data. We need to give the particular index value, 0th index value for the first index value in order to specify the data and add the data. In array list, no need to specify the index. Okay, it automatically iterates the value to the next index value. Okay, so array are not type parameterized, but array list are type parameterized. Okay, an array can contain primitive data types as well as object, but array list can contain only objects. No primitive data types are allowed. So okay, so this is exception in array list. Okay, so array can contain both primitive data types as well as object, but array list can contain only objects. No primitive data types are allowed. I hope you understood. Okay, so now next question is, what is a map in Java? So we have different data types and different data structures in Java. So we also have a map. So map is an interface of utility package which helps us to map unique keys to value. So we have basically two pair values. First is unique key, which refers to particular value. Okay, so we will discuss about this later, what is a map in Java. So map interface is not a subset of a main collection interface. So we have a large collection interface in our Java. Okay, and main collection interface in our Java, but map interface is not a subset of any main collection interface, and it behaves little different from the other collection types because it has a key and value combination pair. Okay, and we have different characteristics of map interface. A map does not contain any duplicate keys. Okay, and each key can map at max one value. Okay, so don't worry, we will discuss about what is a map in Java in later, but we only talk about basic interview questions which are mostly asked in all companies interview. Okay, so that's why our only focus is on basics of all questions. Okay, if you have any query, if you want any particular video for any topic in detail, so you can ask freely in comment section. So next question is, what is collection class in Java? And list down is method and interface. So in Java, we already talk about, we have a main collection interface, and we have a different collections in our Java. So what is collection? So collection is basically a framework that acts as an architecture. So we have a particular architecture which we can use for storing and manipulating a group of objects. Okay, so if we have a complex structure, and we can see we have a complex data, if we have a large code, so we can use collection framework that acts as an architecture and we can use for storing and manipulating a group of objects. So collection can perform various tasks like searching, sorting, insertion, manipulation, and deletion in a very easy way. So collection framework includes it have their own interface, and it is also have classes. Collection have their classes, and collection have also their methods. So we will talk about collection in later, but you should know about what is a collection in Java. So just simple, collection is a framework that acts as an architecture for storing, and it can help us to perform various tasks like searching, sorting, insertion, manipulation, and deletion. Particular and in detail implementation and execution of all collection classes, and with example we will discuss in our next video. Okay. So what is polymorphism? We already talk about OOPS concept, and we already talk about basic definition of polymorphism. But what are the different types of polymorphism, and what is the actual use of polymorphism? The polymorphism we already discussed is the we can say describe as one interface, many implementation. Okay, and polymorphism is a characteristic of being able to assign a different meaning. If particular interface have one interface have many implementation, and we can say, and if you can assign to one object have different meanings and uses to something in a different context, which we allow to an entity such as variable, functions on an object to have more than one form. If a particular object, function, and variables have more than one form, so we can say that a particular concepts of OOPS is called polymorphism. So there are basically two types of polymorphism. First is compile time polymorphism, and second is runtime polymorphism. So compile time polymorphism is also called method overloading, whereas runtime polymorphism is done by using inheritance and interface. Okay, so if we talk about particular polymorphism example, so we can easily see that we have mobile. Okay, so mobile have different features. Mobile have camera feature also, and mobile have remote feature also. Mobile can be used as a remote, and mobile also have MP3 song feature. So if one object, method, and we can say if one interface have many implementation features, so we can say this is called polymorphism. Okay. So what is abstraction in Java? We already discussed about abstraction, hidden implementation. So abstraction refers to the quality of dealing with ideas rather than event, and it is basically deals with hiding the details and only expose some basic user details to the user. Okay, and it provides us functionality, whatever we want to expose, and whatever details we want to expose, we can show. Okay, and showing the essential things to the user. You can say that abstraction in Java is the process of hiding the implementation details from the user and revealing only the functionality to them. And abstraction can be achieved only by two ways. First, we can create abstract class. So if we create abstract class, so it is 100% of abstraction can be achieved. But if we use interface, so then also 100% of abstraction can be achieved. But in abstract class, there is a range. There might be 50% abstraction we can achieve, there might be 60%, 70%, and also 0% and also 100%. But if we use interface, okay, we will discuss about this abstract classes and interface in later in our next video. But if we use interface, so 100% of abstraction can be achieved. Okay, so what do you mean by an interface in Java? So what is interface? So interface in Java is a blueprint of a class. Class is a blueprint, but interface in Java is also a blueprint of a class, and we can say it is a collection of abstract method. In interface, we have a different collection of abstract method and static constant. Okay, so in an interface, each method is public and abstract. Okay, but it does not contain any constructor. So first point is very important. Interface is a collection of abstract method. We have different collections of method in interface and static constant, but in an interface, each method is public, okay, and abstract, but it does not contain any constructor. Okay, So interface basically a group of related methods which are related to each other with empty bodies. Okay, so this is an example of interface. We have an interface name animal, and you can see this interface is of public type, and we have different methods, but all methods are empty. There is not any body inside this method. Okay, so this is interface. Okay, what is the actual purpose of this interface? An abstract method which we basically need to implement the abstraction. So we will discuss about this later, but you should know about the basic of interface. So interface is a blueprint of a class, and interface contains different abstract method, and that particular abstract methods does not have any body. Okay, what is the difference between abstract class and interface? Okay, we already talked about interface and abstract class, but what is the actual difference between abstract class and interface, and what is the actual purpose of abstract class and interface? So abstract class can provide complete default code and or just the details that have to be overwritten, but in interface cannot provide any code at all, just the signature. We have only empty methods inside the interface. We can't write body, and we can't provide any code inside that particular method. But in abstract class we can provide complete default code and just the details that had to be overridden. In the case of abstract class, a class may extend only one abstract class. If we want to extend any particular abstract class, okay, so we can extend only one abstract class. A class may implement several interfaces. Okay, so we can implement several interfaces. An abstract class can have non-abstract method also. Okay, so abstract class can extend one abstract class, and abstract class can have also non-abstract methods. Okay, all methods of an interface are abstract. So inside interface all methods are abstract. Okay, so we can't use non-abstract method inside the interface. So all abstract class can have instance variable, but an interface cannot have instance variable. Okay, so an abstract class can have visibility public, private, protected, but we already discussed an interface visibility must be public or none. Okay, if we add a new method to an abstract class, then we have an option of providing default implementation, and therefore all existing code might work properly. But if we have a new method to an interface, then we have to track down all the implementation of interface and define implementation for a new method. Okay, an abstract class can contain constructor, interface cannot contain constructor. We already discussed on our previous slide. Okay, and abstract classes are fast and interface are slow, as it requires extra indirection to find the corresponding method in the actual class, because we only have particular method signature. We don't have body. So for a in particular interaction, and we can say we need to we require extra indirection to find the corresponding method in the actual class. Okay, so that's why interfaces are slow. Okay, I hope you understood. So what is inheritance in Java? So you already know about inheritance. There is a child parent relationship, and where the properties of one class can be inherited by the other. Okay, and it helps us to reuse the code. So if interviewer asks you what is the actual purpose and why we use inheritance in Java, so you can say it helps us to reuse the code and establish a relationship between different classes. So we can perform inheritance between two types of classes. So first is parent class, super or base class, and there is a child class. So subclass or derived class, we only need to use extend keyword to give the relationship between this child class and parent class to inherit the property of this parent class. So a class which inherits the properties is known as child class, and whereas the class whose properties are inherited is known as parent class. Okay, so I hope you understood. So what are the different types of inheritance in Java? So there are four basically different types of inheritance in Java. First is single inheritance. So one class simply inherits the property of another, and that is there will be only one parent and one child. Okay, so that particular inheritance is called single inheritance. And there is a multi-level inheritance when a class is derived from a class which is also derived from another class. So there are different levels. So first there are class which is derived from another class, and there is also a class which is derived from another class. So there is basically a multi levels. Okay, so such type of inheritance is called multi-level inheritance. And there is also a hierarchical inheritance when a class has more than one child class, and so we can say there is a parent class and we have two child classes. So if one parent have more than one child classes, or in other words more than one child classes have the same parent class, then such kind of inheritance is called hierarchical inheritance. And what is hybrid inheritance? Hybrid inheritance is a combination of two or more types of inheritance. So if we want to use two or more types of combination of inheritance, if we want to use multi-level and hierarchical combination, so that particular type of combination of inheritance is called hybrid inheritance. And we also have another type of inheritance, but Java does not support that inheritance, which is multiple inheritance. So we will discuss about this later. So what is method overloading and method overriding? We already discussed about compile time polymorphism and runtime polymorphism, and compile time polymorphism, also known as method overloading. So what is method overloading? So in method overloading, methods of the same class. So we simply have a class, okay, and we have two different methods, but that particular methods have same name, but each method must have a different number of parameters, or parameter having different types and order. So we will discuss about this with the example, okay. So method overloading is to add or extend more to the method's behavior. So it is also called compile time polymorphism, and the method have a different signature but have same name. It may or may not need inheritance in method overloading. So let's take a look at the example below to understand it better. So we can implement method overloading first by changing number of arguments. So we have a class named adder, and we have two static methods named add. So both two methods have same name but different number of arguments. So we can implement method overloading by changing number of arguments. So inside the main method we call this add method, and this parameter will pass to this method, because this method have two parameters, and we also pass two parameters. So this will goes to this add method and return the result. And if we call this method and pass the value, so we have three parameters and we want to pass three parameter value, so this will goes to this add method. We have three parameters, so we can changing number of arguments and implement this method overloading. We can also apply method overloading by changing the data type of argument. So in this program also we have two methods named add same, and but in this program we change the data type of argument. So we can apply method loading by changing the data type also, okay. So I hope you understood. So next is, what is method overriding? So in method overriding, the subclass, and we can say the child class, have the same method with the same name and exactly the same number of type of parameter and same return type as a superclass. So in method overloading we have two methods in same classes, but in method overriding we have a relationship between two classes. There is a parent class, there is a child class. In parent class and child class, they both have a same name and exactly same number and type of parameter and same return type as a superclass, okay. So to override the method is to change existing behavior of the method. So it is a runtime polymorphism, okay. So method must have the same signature. It always require inheritance in method overriding. So in method overloading we don't need inheritance, but in method overriding we require inheritance in method overriding, okay. So let's take a look at this example. So we have a class named animal, okay, parent class, and we have a method named move, and we want to print this statement, animal can move. And we also have a child class, okay, named dog, which extend this animal class. So this is parent class, this is child class, and we also have a method named move. So both have same signature, and in this class we want to print animal can move, and in this class we want to print dog can walk and run. So we invoke the superclass method from the child class. And there is a main class named testDog class, which have main method, and we call this we have reference for animal class, child class, but we call the dog object class, and we can say call the dog or dog class constructor, child class constructor, okay. So we call this move method. So this will override the parent class method. When we call this move method, first output is animal can move, okay, animal can move, parent class method, okay, parent class method value, and then dog can walk and run. So it basically override this move method and goes towards this animal class, this move method. So animal reference, but we have dog object, okay. So run the method in the dog class, okay. So I hope you understood. So we already discussed about different types of inheritance. So what is multiple inheritance, and it is supported by Java or not? So I already discussed about this. We already discussed about what is what are different types of inheritance, and there is also another type of inheritance which is multiple inheritance, which is not supported by Java. So if a child class inherits the property of multiple classes, is known as multiple inheritance. But why Java does not allow to extend multiple classes? So there is a reason, and we can say there is a problem with multiple inheritance, is that if multiple parent class have the same method name, okay, if multiple parent class have same method name, then at runtime it becomes difficult for the compiler to decide which method to execute. We have a child class and we extend both classes, and we call particular method inside this child class, and that particular method with same signature is present in the B class also, in the C class also. Then how compiler can find and how compiler can decide which method to execute from the child class? So therefore Java does not support multiple inheritance. So the problem is commonly referred to as diamond problem. This problem is known as diamond problem. Okay, so I hope you understood. So what is the encapsulation in Java? So encapsulation, we already discussed, is a mechanism where you bind your data, and we can say you bind your variables and methods together in a single unit. So data is hidden from in the outer world and can be exist only via current class method. So basically this helps in protecting the data from any unnecessary modification, and we can achieve encapsulation in Java. So by two ways: first, declaring the variable of a class is private, and provide public getter and setter method to modify and view the value of variables. Okay, so we will discuss about this encapsulation later with the examples and execution. So I hope you understood what is the basic concept of encapsulation, inheritance, abstraction, and interface, and all basic concepts of Java. So next is association. There is a concept called association. There is a relationship called association. So association is a relationship where all objects have their own life cycle, okay, and there is no owner. So all different objects have their own life cycle, and there is no owner. Okay, so let's take an example of teacher and student. So multiple students can associate with a single teacher, okay, and a single student can associate with multiple teachers, but there is no ownership between the objects, and both have their own life cycle. Student have their own life cycle, teacher have their own life cycle, and multiple student can associate with single teacher, and single student also associate with multiple teachers. Okay, and there is also no ownership. So these relationship can be one to one, one to many, many to one, and many to many. So that's why these relationships are called association. Okay, so what is composition in Java? So composition is again a specialized form of aggregation, and we can call this as a death relationship. Okay, it is a strong type of aggregation. So let's take again an example. So child object does not have their life cycle, and parent object deletes all the child object will also be deleted. So let's take an example of relationship between house and rooms. So house can contain multiple rooms. There is no independent type of room, and any room can not belongs to two different houses. If particular room is inside the particular house, so that particular room cannot belongs to two different houses. So if we delete the house, room will automatically delete. Okay, so it is a strong type of aggregation, and there is a death relationship. If one particular object will delete, then other object will automatically delete. Okay, so next is we already discussed about object. So what is object cloning in Java? So object cloning in Java is the process of creating an exact copy of an object. We can say a clone of an object. Okay, so what is the purpose? It basically means the ability to create an object with similar state as the original object. To achieve this, Java provides a method. We have an inbuilt clone method to make use of this functionality. So this method creates a new instance of a class of the current object, and then initialize all its fields with this exact same content of corresponding field. To object clone the marker interface, we have a java.lang.clonable must be implemented to avoid any runtime exception. One thing you must notice, object clone is protected method, thus you need to override it. We already discussed, if we have a protected method, so we need to override it. Okay. What is a copy constructor in Java? So copy constructor is a member function that is used to initialize an object using another object of the same class. So try to understand, copy constructor is a member function which is used to initialize an object. We want to initialize an object, but by using another object of the same class. Okay, so there is no need for copy constructor in Java since all objects are passed by reference. So there is no need of copy constructor. We can use this copy constructor in C++, but in Java there is no need of copy constructor, because in Java, since all objects are passed by reference, so Java does not even support automatic pass by value. Okay, so next is what is the constructor overloading in Java. there is a method overloading, but there is also a constructor overloading. So constructor overloading is a technique of adding any number of constructor to a class, each having a different parameter list. So we have a class named demo and we have a constructor demo. So there are two constructor. So just like same as method overloading, we can also implement constructor overloading, each having a different parameter list. So the compile use the number of parameter and their types in the list to differentiate the overloaded constructor. Okay, so I hope you understood. So how many types of memory areas are allocated by JVM? We already discussed about heap area and stack area, and we already discussed the difference between heap and stack area. So what are the different types of memory areas are allocated by JVM? So we have a class method area. So this area is responsible to store per class structure such as the runtime, constant, pool, fields, method, data, and the code for method. And we also discussed about heap area. So it is the runtime data area in the memory, in which the memory is allocated to the object. Okay, so this area is responsible for storage of per class structure and their fields, method, data, and code, and this is responsible for runtime area storage and allocated to the object. And this stores frames. It holds local variable, partial results, temporary results, and each thread has a private JVM stack created at the same time. Okay, and new frame is created each time a method is invoked. A frame is destroyed when its method invocation completes. So it is responsible for temporary storage. Okay, and program counter register, we have a PC register, contains the address of a JVM instruction currently being executed. And next we have a native method stack. It contains all the native method and all the native method used in the application. So if we want to use any neighboring programming language method and any library method inside our program, so we can use a native method, and that particular native method store in native method stack. So next is, what is the default value of the local variable? So this question is also important. So local variables are not initialized to any default value, neither primitive nor objects. So local variable does not contain any default value and does not initialize to any default value. So what if I write static public void instead of public static void, and we can say, what if we change the order of public static void? Means the program compiles and run correctly because the order of specifier does not matter in Java. Okay, so if we change the order of specifier in Java, okay, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so next is, what is the purpose of static methods and variables? Okay, we already discussed about static methods, variables, static class. So what is the purpose of static methods and variables? So the method of or variable define the statics are shared among all the objects of a class. Okay, so first and most important difference is static is a part of a class and not of object. Static only link and only is the part of a class, because we don't need any object to initialize static method, to initialize static object, static variable. So static variables are always stored in the class area, and we don't need to create the object to access such variables. Therefore static is used in this case where we need to define variables or method which are common to all the object of a class. So let's take an example. In a class simulating the collection of students in a college, the name of a college is a common attribute to all the students. Okay, therefore the college name will be defined as static. One time allocation and one time, okay, declaration. We don't need to declare again and again because college name is same for all students, so we can use static members. Okay, so what are the advantages of packages in Java? We already discussed about packages, so we already discussed about this. Okay, packages about name clashes, they provide easier access control, we can also have hidden class, and it is easier to locate the related class. We already discussed about advantages of packages in our previous slide. Okay, so what is the difference between object oriented programming language and object based programming language? This question is very important, and this question is very confusing question also. So what is the difference between object oriented and object based programming language? So simple object oriented language, we already discussed, follow all the concept of OOPS, but whereas object based language does not follow all the concept of OOPS like inheritance and polymorphism. Okay, in object oriented language do not have the inbuilt objects, whereas object based language have the inbuilt object. For example, JavaScript has window object, so JavaScript is object based language. Okay, so examples of object oriented programming language are Java, C#, Smalltalk, whereas examples of object based language are JavaScript or Visual Basic Script. Okay, I hope you understood what is the difference between object oriented and object based programming language. So does constructor return any value? So we already discussed about constructor. So yes, constructor implicitly return the current instance of the class, but you can't use an explicit return type, and you can't define any return type with the constructor. All processes implicit and all processes are internal in the constructor. So we can say that yes, constructor implicitly returns the current instance, but you can't use any return type inside the constructor. So can you make a constructor final? No, constructor can't be final. So what will be the initial value of an object reference which is defined as an instance variable? So all object reference are initialized to be to null in Java. Okay, so is constructor inherited? No, constructor is not inherited. We can't use inheritance in constructor. So what do you understand by copy constructor in Java? We already discussed about copy constructor. Okay, so in our previous slide. So next question is, what are the difference between the constructor and method? Okay, so we also discussed about constructor and method. Constructor is used to initialize state of an object, and the method is used to expose the behavior of an object. And constructor must not have any return type, and method have a return type. Constructor is invoked and called implicitly and is called explicitly, and Java compiler provides a default constructor, but method is not provided by the compiler. Constructor name should be same and method name may or may not be same. Okay, and next is, can we override the static method? No, we can't override static method. So what are the restrictions that are applied to the Java static method? We have Java static method. So what are the different restrictions? Java static method cannot use non-static data members or call the non-static method directly. Okay, and this and super cannot be used in static constant as they are non-static. Okay, so what is the static block? We already discussed about static method, static members. And so what is the static block? So static block is used to initialize the static data member. If we want to initialize static data member, so we can use static block. It is executed before the main method. It is always executed before the main method. Okay, and at the time of class loading. Okay, so there is a class name A2 and there is a static block. Okay, so before execution of main and before loading of class. Okay, at the time of class loading, first execute this initialize this static data member by using static block. Okay, so as you can see, the output is static block is invoked and then hello main. Okay, so can we execute a program without main method? Yes, one of the ways to execute the program without the main method is using static block. We already discussed about static block, so we can use static block. And can we execute a program without main method? Okay, so what if the static modifier is removed from the signature of main method? So program compiles. However, at runtime it throws an error. No such method error, but program compiles. Okay, next is, what is the difference between static class method and instance method? Okay, so static or class method and instance method both are different. So static or class method is declared as a static is known as static method, and instance method is not declared as static and known as instance method. We don't need to create the object to call the static method for static, because it always relate to class, not relate to object. The object is required to call the instance method, and a non-static members cannot be exist in the static constant. We already discussed about this, and static and non-static both can be exist. And this is an example. We need to use static keyword to use static method, and don't need to write any static keyword. Okay, can we make constructor static? As we know that the static constant belongs to the class, not the object. Static method, static block, static variable always belong to the class, not the object. But constructor are invoked and called only by the object, only when the object is created. So there is no sense to make the constructor static. So if you try to do so, the compiler will show the compiler error. So next, can we make the abstract method static in Java? Can we make the abstract method static in Java? In Java, we make the abstract method static. It will become the part of the class. Okay, because if we use abstract method, because static methods, static variable always belong to the class. So if we make abstract method static, so it will become the part of the class, and we can directly call it which is necessary. So calling an undefined method is completely useless, therefore it is not allowed. So can we declare the static variable and methods in a abstract class? So in this, can we make the abstract method static in Java? Now we discuss, can we declare the static variable and methods in an abstract class? So we are trying to understand this with the help of example. So yes, we can declare static variables and method in an abstract method. But as we know that there is no requirement to make the object to access the static constant context, therefore we can access the static constant declared inside the abstract class by using the name of a abstract class. So in this example, we have an abstract class named test. Okay, and we have we have static member, static variable, and we also have a static method named test method. Okay, and there is a public class which extend this test class, this abstract class, and inside this main method, by using this test class, abstract class, we call this test method. Okay, test method, we are trying to call this invoke this test method. Okay, and in this we want to print hi, I am good, and in this we want to print I value, okay, which is 102 inside this abstract class. Okay, so output is first hi, I am good, and this I equals to 102 value. So both statement will be print. Okay, because we can declare static variables and methods inside the abstract method, and we can also access that particular variable in our main method. Okay, but as we know, there is no requirement to make the object to access the static constant. Therefore we can access the static constant declare inside the abstract class by using the name of the abstract class. So we need to use the name of that particular abstract class. Because of this name of this abstract class, we can use and we can access the particular member and particular method and variable of that particular abstract class. Okay, so I hope you understood. So what is the main use of this keyword? We already discussed about this keyword. So what is the actual use of this keyword? So this can be used to refer to the current class. We already discussed it. Always talk about the current reference and current class instance variable, and this can be used to invoke current class method. Okay, it can be used to invoke the current class constructor, and this can be passed an argument in the method call. We can also pass an argument. Okay, and this can be passed an argument in the constructor call, and this can be used to return the current class instance from the method. But always talk about current class reference. Okay, so can we assign the reference to this variable? If we want to assign any reference to this variable, no, this cannot be assigned to any value because it will always point to the current class, okay, object, and this is a final reference in Java. Or if we try to do so, the compiler error will be shown. So let's discuss this example. Okay, so we have a class named test, and we have a method, okay, and we have a constructor, okay, named test, and this method named test, and we give the reference to this variable to null, this variable reference to null, initialize with null, and printing statement is test class constructor called. Okay, test class. So inside this main method, we are we basically trying to call this test constructor from the main method. So we create an object and call this test constructor. So as you can see, it will throw an error. Error cannot assign a value to a final variable this equal to null, because we already discussed this cannot be assigned to any value, and in this constructor we assign value to this equals to null. Okay, because it will always point to the current class object. So it will always point to current class object, but we assign the value to this variable. That's why it will throw an error. If you try to do so, the compiler error will be shown. Okay, so can this keyword be used to refer a static member? Yes, it is possible to use this keyword to refer a static member, because this is just a reference variable which refers to current class object. Okay, so as we know that it is unnecessary to access static variable through objects, therefore it is not the best practice to use this to refer static members. So in this example, as we can see, there is a class named test, and we have a static member name I equals to 10 value, and we have a constructor, and we basically refer this static member. Okay, so in main method we create an object and call this test constructor, and inside this test constructor we refer static member. So output is 10, but it is not the best practice to use this to refer static member. Okay, so we can use and to refer static member by using this keyword. Okay, so what are the advantages of passing this into a method instead of a current class object itself? So if we are trying to pass this into a method instead of a current class, so what are the advantages? So as we know that this refers to the current class object, therefore it must be similar to current class object. So there can be two main advantages. First is this is a final variable. Okay, because it always refers to current class object, so this is always a final variable. Therefore this cannot be assigned to any new value, because its value and its reference is fixed. So that's why it is called final variable, and it cannot be assigned to any new value, whereas a current class object might not be final, but current class object might not be final and can be changed. So this can be used in the synchronized block. Okay, and this we can pass this into a method instead of a current class object itself. Okay, so why is multiple inheritance not supported? We already discussed about why multiple inheritance and already discussed about what is the actual problem and purpose. So let's take an example. So we have a class A and class B and class C. So child class C trying to extend both classes A and B, and we can say we have a class C which have two parent classes A and B. Okay, so in main method we create an object, okay, and call the constructor C, default constructor, but we are trying to call this message method. Now which message method would be invoked, because this same signature method, message method, is mentioned in both class and B. So there is a confusion. Since the compile time error are better than runtime error, Java renders compile time error if you inherit two classes. So whether you have the same method or different, there will be a compile time error. Okay, that's why Java does not support multiple inheritance in. Okay, I hope you understood. So we already discussed about what is aggregation and aggregation and composition. So aggregation relationship we already discussed. Aggregation is best described as a relationship. Okay, and composition we already discussed about composition and with example. Okay, so we also discussed about super keyword. So let's take an look at the example. So we have a class name animal, and we also have a class named dog, child class. This is a parent class, this is a child class, and extend this animal class. So there is a parent child relationship, and inside this dog class we have a method named dog, in which we are trying to print this statement dog is created. And in this main class we have an object D and call this dog method, dog constructor. So first output is animal is created and then dog is created, because inside this dog class, the class dog extends animal. If we use super, is called the class constructor implicitly by the compiler if there is no super or this. Okay, so implicitly called super keyword, and first parent class statement will print animal is created, then dog class print will string. Okay, I hope you understood. So we already discussed about what are the main uses of super keywords. So super can be used to refer to the immediate parent class and call the immediate parent class method, and to call immediate parent class constructor. So what is the difference between this and super keyword? So super keyword always point to the parent class, whereas this always point to current class. So we already discussed about this and super in our previous slide. Okay, so can you use this and super both in a constructor? No, because this and super must be the first statement in the class. If we use this, so we need to use this statement in our class as a first statement and also for super. So we can't use both this and super in the class, both in our class constructor. As we can see in this example, we have a class named test, and we have a constructor test, and we trying to use both super and this, and then we have a statement, printing statement test class objects created. In main method, when we create an object and call this constructor, and it will throw an error. Call to this must be first statement constructor, because this in this program is the second statement. Okay, that's why it will throw an error. Why is method overloading not possible by changing the return type? We already discussed about method overloading. We can implement method overloading by changing number of argument and by changing the number of type of data type of argument. But why we can't use method overloading and it is not possible by changing the return type? So in Java, method overloading is not possible by changing the return type of the program due to avoid the ambiguity and confusion. Because let's take the look at this example. So we have a class name adder, and we have a add method, static and add method, and we have two arguments, int a and int b, and return a plus b. And in second method, double add, we have int a int b and return this a plus b value. So in this main class, when we trying to compile and when we trying to call this add method and pass this value 11, so there is a confusion. Compiler will be confused and will be a ambiguity occur, because when we pass this value, So there will be a confusion and there will be a ambiguity, because by changing the return type of a argument, we can't apply method overloading, because in this method also we have two members, a and b, and in this method also we have two members, a and b. So we by changing the return type in Java, we can't use and we can't apply method overloading, because it will throw an error. And you, as you can see, method add int is already defined in the class adder. So there is ambiguity and there will be a confusion if you're trying to use and trying to compile the program you are trying to use and changing the return type in Java and trying to implement method overloading. Okay, that's why we can't implement method overloading by changing the return type of a Java. Okay, so next is, can we overload the method by making them static? So no, we cannot overload the method by just applying the static keyword to them. Okay, so let's take a look at this example. We have a class name animal and we have a method named consume. Okay, and also a static method named consume. Okay, both method name is same. So we are trying to basically overload these both method. First is non-static method and second is static method. So in our main method, first we create an object. Okay, and then we call this method. Okay, we call this method name consume and pass value 10, and then again call this method consume and pass value 2. But in this we give the reference to by using this object, and in this we give the reference by using this animal class. Okay, so output is, it will throw an error, method consume int. Method consume int is already defined in class animal static void consume. Okay, so non-static method consume int cannot be referenced from a static constant. Basically we are trying to give the reference and non-static method reference to a static constant. So if you are trying to give the reference of non-static method to a static constant, so it will throw an error. Okay, because this consume method is of type static, and this of type non-static. So you are trying to give the reference of this non-static method by using this static constant. Okay, that's why it will throw an error. So can we overload the main method? Yes, we can have any number of main method in a Java program by using method overloading. Okay, so rules for method overloading, we already discussed. The method must have the same name in the parent class, and method must overriding. Rules for method overriding, so method must have the same name in the parent class and method must have the same signature, and we have a easy relationship, child parent relationship between them. Okay, can we override the static method? No, you can't override the static method because they are the part of a class, not the object. Okay, can we override the private methods? No, we cannot override the private method because the scope of a private method, we already discussed, is limited to a class and we cannot access them outside of the class. Okay, why can we not override static method? So it is because the static method is a part of a class, we already discussed, and it is bound within the class, where the instance method is bound within the object, and static gets memory in class area and instance get memory in a heap. That's why we can't apply override static method. Okay, so what is covariant return type? This question is also very important. So since Java 5, it is possible to override any method by changing the return type if the return type of a subclass overriding method is a subclass type. So it is known as covariant type. The covariant return type specifies that the return type may vary in the same direction as the subclass. So let's take a look at this example. So we have a class name A and also have a method, okay, get method, okay, which basically return this current instance value, and we have a child class named B which extend this A class parent class, and also have a method, this get method, and this also return this current class instance, this current method instance. So we have a message method, void method, and printing statement is welcome to covariant return type, and we have a main method, and we basically trying to call this class constructor and with this get method and this message method. So output is welcome to covariant return type. Okay, we have a different return type. Okay, in this method we have a return type of this current instance, Okay, and in this method we have a return type, and we can say we have not any return type. We basically print this statement. So we have not any return type in this method, so this is basically a covariant return type. So it is possible to override any method by changing the return type. Since Java 5, if the return type of subclass, overriding method is a subclass type. Okay, if both method are in this both subclass. Okay, so we can override this method. Okay, what is the final variable? We already discussed about final variable is used to restrict the user from updating it. If we initialize final variable, we can't change this value. We can say final variable once assigned to a value can never be changed. So let's take a look at this example. We have a class named bike9, and we have a variable which is final, speed limit equals to 90, final variable, and we have a method named run, and speed limit equals to 400 in this method. So whenever we create an object and call this bike9 constructor, bike9 default constructor, and call this run method, so it will throw an error because we declare this method we already declared this variable as final, and in this method we are trying to modify the value of this final variable, so we can't change the value of the final variable. That's why it will throw in compile time error. Okay, so what is the final method? If we change any method to a final method, we can't override it. So we have a class bike class, and we have a method run method which is final, and we also have a class child class which is Honda. Okay, so in run method, okay, we have a printing statement running safely with 100 km/h, and in final void run method we have a printing statement running. So whenever we trying to call and invoke this method, first we create an object named Honda and call this Honda class constructor, child class constructor, and call this run method. So it will throw an error. Okay, because we can't override it. Okay, so and we trying to override these both method, both have same name in child class and parent class. So what is the final class? If we make any class final, we can't inherit it any of the subclasses. So in this example, as you can see, it will throw an error. We have a parent class bike, and we have a child class this Honda one. We have the and parent class is final, so we can't inherit it, and we are trying to extend and inherit this parent class, so we can't inherit it to any of the subclasses. That's why it will throw an error. So can we declare a constructor as final? So constructor can never be declared as final because it is never inherited. Okay, we already discussed about in our previous slide. So it will throw an error. What is the difference between final method and abstract method? So main difference between the final and abstract is that the abstract method cannot be final, as we need to override them in the subclass to give its definition. Okay, so abstract method cannot be final. Okay, so can we declare an interface as final? No, we cannot declare an interface as final because the interface must be implemented. We need to give the implementation of the interface by some class to provide this definition. So if we declare interface as final, so we can't give the particular implementation of that interface. Therefore, there is no sense to make an interface final. If you try to do so, the compiler will show an error. So please, if you have any problem, you can freely ask. Please support our channel and like this video, subscribe our channel, share with your friends. Thank you, friends. So thanks for watching. Please support our channel, join and follow us.